an educational approach which includes non-structured instruction. In other words, a process by which for a period, a small period, students themselves are able to make their own discoveries. Of course, education is longer neutral the moment you listen to instruction anywhere. But that, my observation from teaching in so many universities, and I think this would be universally agreed, is that there is a certain period in which the young mind is very vulnerable, and there's a competition for that space, always. It's so decisive because it impinges on the formal disciplines. So at the beginning, I believe some kind of structure, unstructured learning, but it's structured, but in a new way of approaching reality, a new way of approaching their own way, bringing their own personal intelligence onto material phenomena, which nobody really does below a certain age. Well, it's obviously provoked by what's been happening to us on this continent, what's happening in the Middle East. But as I remarked, it's also become a concern, a global concern. The infectious nature of extreme doctrines has been underestimated for far too long. And when you bring young minds together and you drop inside that pool of awareness a mentor whose orientation is already fixed, inflexible, the result can be predicted. If, however, those students, if their primary and fundamental, even foundational method of learning is the deductions of their own intelligence from a common reality, then there's a possibility that they will grow up, they will develop a flexibility even towards the formal disciplines, which for me is far more creative than learning by rote. Well, I think this is one of those instances, the projects where the instructors, the mentors, should take a back seat. That's why, for instance, I said the books, and this is extreme, that those students should not even be allowed to bring their own books, but will have access to reference material. Reference material at least tries to be neutral, unlike textbooks. Reference material which they explore and they see what has been taught about, let us say, a basket of flowers. They see what has gone on before, and they, shall we say, interrogate that by what they actually observe, the processes of the maturation of the flowers, the arrangement, disarrangement. Then they move from there to learn about Japanese flower arrangement as opposed to the one in Johannesburg sitting in front of us. So they move from the particular to both history and then to their own creative tendency towards a rearrangement. That, in a nutshell, is what the prospect is. Very difficult to say. It's difficult to say because it's a methodology I use in teaching to some extent. And throughout my experience of teaching, I tended to encourage students very much along those lines. Were the universities receptive? I suppose I always had a kind of autonomy in my department, so I don't know how they would have responded. But at least they were not hostile. Receptivity, don't forget, it's not a rigid, in fact, I'm trying to destructure, so I'm not saying that this is the structure. No, I'm just saying that enabling group interrogation of vulnerable minds of reality, common reality, and the most common is the environment. And it's from there, as I said, that you can explore, you can then research into the history of the actuality which we all share. So it's that kind of exercise that I'm trying to promote. I think universities might be receptive to it. I mean, it needn't even interfere with their regular curriculum. That's the beauty of it. In Nigeria, for instance, we have what is known as youth service, youth corps. When you're taking your degree, then you are thrown into the world before you even start your professional career. Well, it's just reversing that, saying that let's have an intellectual youth corps exercise, and let's see how that impinges, how that affects the augmentation of regular academic disciplines. It's just the same thing. Well, first of all, the problem can no longer be avoided. It's stark, it's daily, it's happening in one part of the world or the other. And I used the word complacency very deliberately. Universities can choose to remain complacent over this problem, but they cannot deny its existence. So it's not a critique of universities as such. Universities are constantly evolving, constantly, I hope, experimenting. New courses are being added daily, old ones are being removed from the curriculum, sometimes simply on account of economic resources. And so it is within that constant evolution of the university idea that I believe that universities might be able to look into the possibilities, even with variations. I don't think universities will think that they're being criticized as such. No, I don't. At least that's not the intention. No.